The Joker is arguably Batman's greatest foe, and I will state unequivocally until the day that I die that the greatest version of the Joker was seen in Batman the Animated Series. When I think about some of the best Joker stories of all time, a bunch of them are from BTAS. Titans like the Laughing Fish, The Man Who Killed Batman, and Joker's Favour, which is my personal favourite, are all wonderful stories that really demonstrate what makes Joker unique among Batman's foes. They easily hold their own against any other great Joker story, like The Dark Knight, The Killing Joke, and the Joker's five-way revenge. He's not driven by greed like the other villains. He doesn't seek to avenge some great tragedy that befell him. No, he's petty, he's mean, he's pure evil. And he can be kind of funny at times. But not every Joker episode is a home run, like The Last Laugh, an episode in which the Joker goes on a crime spree to mark April Fool's Day. Now, remember, just because I don't think that this episode is as good as the other Joker episodes, that doesn't mean it's garbage. I know a number of talented people worked on this episode, and despite their efforts, it didn't turn out as well as many of their other episodes. This happens from time to time with any creative endeavour. And hey, if you like this episode, more power to you. The world would be a very boring place if we all liked exactly the same things. With that little disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about how I feel this episode misses the mark. It's April Fool's Day in Gotham City, and the entire city is in the mood for practical jokes, including the Joker. But his idea of a practical joke is to gas the financial district with a bizarre chemical compound that induces insanity, and if not treated soon enough, its effects can be permanent. If Joker had just wanted to do this because he thought it would be funny, I'd find the concept a bit more palatable. But the thing is, he does this because he wants to rob jewellery stores, and he delivers the gas via a smelly garbage barge that is dragged along by his submarine. I just think that this whole scheme is a conventional crime unbefitting of BTAS's Joker. I guess the stinky barge is a funny thing, sort of, maybe? But remember, this is the same man that would go on to poison all of Gotham's fish in an attempt to trademark their likeness. He went out to destroy a casino that used his likeness without his permission, and come to think of it, this Joker is very protective of his trademark grin. I just think that my main issue is that this gas attack is very impersonal, and it's pretty secondary, with the theft being the primary goal. It's not the punchline to a twisted joke that only he gets. It feels very much like the sort of thing you might see in earlier Batman cartoons like The Adventures of Batman from the 1960s. Of course, Joker frequently commits thefts, but it's rarely the central purpose of his plans. There's always some other aspect to it. Take The Man Who Killed Batman, for instance, where the Joker commits a similar robbery, all in the hope of getting Batman's attention. When it becomes clear that Batman isn't coming, Joker abandons his loot, telling Harley to put everything back because without Batman, crime has no punchline. A bit like this episode. And I don't know why, but I find the inclusion of that submarine with the smile on front of it as his base of operations really off-putting. It's not at all grounded like the other BTAS episodes. It reminds me of the 1960s Batman movie where the Penguin had a penguin-themed submarine at his disposal that he let the Joker, Catwoman and the Riddler on. This episode feels like the antithesis of what Batman the Animated Series is when it is at its best. There's no emotional complexity. The stakes are fairly high, I guess, but the payoff just doesn't materialise. An important thing to remember though is that this episode was produced very early in the series' run, before the show's identity had fully cemented. This was the fourth episode to be produced right after On Leather Wings, which was fantastic, Christmas with the Joker, which wasn't, and Nothing to Fear, which was somewhere in the middle. If we compare the tone of the episode with the other three that were made at that point, well, they have very little in common. Although, having said that, The Last Laugh's ending is almost identical to the ending of Christmas with the Joker, where Joker slipped on a roller skate and almost fell into a vat of molten metal. In this case, he trips on a loose cable, falls into a furnace, and has to be rescued by Batman. I've previously talked about how the first story editor on the show, Sean Catherine Derrick, clashed with producers Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski because she was instructed by the networks to make a more traditional child-friendly cartoon. She had worked on shows like The Smurfs and Captain Planet, so her approach wasn't really compatible with the dark, moody action show that Timm and Radomski had envisaged. This conflict eventually got to the point that production on the show essentially halted, with the producers refusing to give the go-ahead for some of the scripts that Derrick had approved. Enter Alan Burnett, who was hired as a producer to break the gridlock. Fortunately for us, he agreed with Timm and Radomski, and things got moving again. The director of the episode, Kevin Altieri, has openly talked about how the final episode barely resembles the original script. In fact, he said that it's pretty much only the original dialogue that remains. Altieri was known for adjusting the scripts for his episodes to optimize them for animation. For instance, in Feet of Clay Part 2, arguably one of the series' best, he extensively rewrote the scene where Clayface kidnaps Germs, streamlining it, cutting out most of the dialogue, and making it much more dynamic. I'm sure that most people that have seen the episode will remember the striking scene where Clayface escapes Batman by jumping off the hospital roof and splatting on the ground. That was his idea. The original script called for Batman and Clayface to fight through the streets of Gotham, with Clayface impersonating everyday objects to try and hide. You can hear more about his approach to directing animation in the Feet of Clay Part 2 commentary track I recorded with him and storyboard artist Brad Rader a while back. While it works as a podcast of sorts, you'll get the most out of it if you simply pop on your copy of the episode, press play on the YouTube video, and listen along. As always, I've included a link to the video in the info button in the top right corner and the description of this video. So this was another case of an early script not quite being there, but they needed to get something made, and Altieri did the best he could with what he had in the time that he had. It's also worth mentioning that Mark Hamill's Joker performance in this episode seems a little off compared to his later performances. If you've ever wondered why, it's because Tim Curry had originally played the Joker for his first few appearances, but when Alan Burnett came on board, he proposed trying someone else. Nobody is saying that Tim Curry isn't capable of playing an insane clown, and if you think that, go watch the original It for evidence to the contrary. But the producers felt that his performance didn't quite gel with what they were trying to achieve, although vocal director Andrea Romano was a big fan of his take on the Joker. I've always viewed Tim Curry's Joker performance as the holy grail of lost BTAS media, so you can imagine my delight when some of his recordings from the episode appeared online a few years ago thanks to YouTuber Phil Macchi. Phil produced a wonderfully detailed 2.5 hour long documentary about the making of BTAS, and buried 3/4 of the way through are some clips of Curry's original Joker performance. I can vividly remember hearing them for the first time. To be honest, I'd kind of spaced out a bit at that point because I was almost 2 hours into the video, but when I heard this strange, goofy voice delivering the Joker's familiar lines, I almost fell out of my chair in disbelief. Curry's Joker was very energetic, a bit cartoony, and went from slapstick to murderous slasher within the space of a few seconds, and when Mark Hamill replaced him, he had to come in and dub the already produced episode, matching Curry's performance to ensure that the lip animation still lined up. He wouldn't get to add his own flair until later episodes. If you want to hear Tim Curry's performance for yourself, be sure to check out Phil's documentary. I honestly can't believe it's only had 11,000 views at time of writing this. Once again, I've linked to it in the description and the info button, but make sure that you watch it after you've watched this video, please and thank you. Now, that's not to say that there's nothing to like about this episode. The threat of Alfred being driven insane by the gas gives Batman an urgency not seen all that often in the show. And there are some nice shots too, like the part where the Joker sits on the conveyor belt and blankly stares ahead. I really like the way the shadows pass over his face. Likewise, you can always count on Shirley Walker to deliver an absolute banger of a score, even for the worst episodes out there. I don't really possess the necessary vocabulary to articulate why her music is so good, but trust me on this, it is great. It's quite an earworm too. Similarly, there are some good jokes, like Alfred drawing Batman a bath, or Batman joking that Alfred's pay will be deducted to cover the cost of the priceless Ming vase he'd destroyed in his stupor. If there weren't many jokes, then I would not have considered this to be much of an April Fool's episode. And of course, who can forget Captain Clown, the Joker's hulking robot henchman. One of the cool things about this episode was that Batman really got to unleash his fury on Captain Clown, because he was a robot. As he wasn't a person, the TV censors pretty much let them do whatever they wanted, and they took full advantage of that. Batman brutally beats him about the head with an iron bar, causing his clown facade to crumble away and reveal his metallic skull. Which was a cool image, but not enough to salvage the episode in my opinion. So, in summary, I view The Last Laugh as the worst Joker episode in Batman the Animated Series for several reasons. It was produced in the middle of a difficult time of production, where two halves of the creative team butted heads and delivered a bog-standard product. The script felt like it came from an earlier, less engaging period in Batman's history, and no amount of tinkering could really fix that. I feel that this episode is really indicative of those early days in the show's history, where they hadn't quite found their footing yet. Their distinctive voice hadn't quite been established yet, But it would come when Alan Burnett joined and brought on writers like Marty Pascoe, Michael Reeves and Paul Dini. Likewise, the animation can be described as uneven at best. A lot of the early staff struggled to get their heads around Bruce Timm's streamlined designs and fought against their urges to add unnecessary details and muscles because that's what they thought looked good. For instance, some of these civilians just don't look like they belong in BTAS. They're far too detailed, and they give the episode a slightly off-brand look. This meant that a lot of work had to be redone and pushed out the door in a less than perfect state. And then there's the fact that Mark Hamill, hands down the best Joker, was constrained by having to match his predecessor's performance. I'm not sure I'd go as far as saying that it was a bad episode though. Maybe bad when compared to most of the other episodes in the series, but as a whole, it's just fine. As I always say whenever talking about episodes of BTAS that don't quite hold up, they can be likened to being the world's shortest giants. They may not reach the staggering heights of the series' best like Two-Face Part 1, Heart of Ice or Trial, but they still tower over their contemporaries. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send a buck or two my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. And special thanks to my channel members. Everyone who was a member at the time of this video's creation is listed on the screen right now. If you want to see your name amongst all these wonderful people, join the channel now. Next time, I'll be back on Friday to wash the taste of this negativity out of my mouth by chowing down on some delightful Joker fish. Yes, I'm going to talk about the other best Joker episode, The Laughing Fish. And next Monday I'm going back to the Creature Commandos to talk about the sad fate of Nina Mazursky, a little girl that only wanted to make friends. Hope to see you then.